Greetings everyone, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. In the last Standing Watch program, I explained to you why I didn't vote in the most recent governmental presidential election. Today I'm going to show you that nothing has changed since the governmental presidential election, and that's one reason why my vote wouldn't have made any difference. But nothing would have changed either if a different outcome would have been manifested. Let me read to you first of all from some articles in the worldly press, which to an extent mirror what the Bible says, even though they have no clue as to what the Bible says. Nevertheless, the New York Times wrote on November 6 that Mr. Obama was re-elected President of the United States on Tuesday as a divided nation voted to give him more time. Hispanics made up an important part of Mr. Obama's winning coalition. Mr. Obama faces governing in a deeply divided country. That's pretty much agreed to by virtually all the commentaries and newspaper articles I have read. Here's an article by Der Spiegel online dated November 7 saying this: Barack Obama may have won the election, but it is a victory devoid of triumph. American elections can no longer be won on the strength of white men's votes alone. The Republican Party must recognize that the increasing numbers of immigrants and Americans descended from immigrants not only plan to remain in the country, but they want to be involved in the decision-making process too. Even Fox News television host Bill O'Reilly has acknowledged that the white establishment is now the minority. By the way, something which the Bible has predicted would happen thousands of years ago. Here's an article by the Washington Times, dated November 7, talking about the Achilles heel of American democracy. It says this: all that for nothing. It was the billion-dollar election that didn't decide one single thing. Republicans control the House, Democrats control the Senate, and the White House remains in Democratic hands with absolute no mandate whatsoever. Another 4 years with no hope of change. This is the Achilles heel of a democracy. Politicians simply tax those who do not support them and give the money to those who do, or give the money to those they would like to have support them. What happened last night is the same thing that is happening for decades in America. Politicians deploy all this highly precise technology to slice and dice voters into little micro groups. The result is you have all these states vote for one side and all these other states vote for the other side, and it all comes down to Florida and Ohio. The only way this gridlock is finally broken is when politicians grow up and decide to seriously address, like adults, the $16 trillion in debts they have racked up on our credit cards. But that, my friends, is not going to happen. The bickering will continue. Here's an article by Newsmax, dated November 7, a Republican paper, if I can call it that, trying to figure out why Mitt Romney lost. And they have some, humanly speaking, interesting thoughts. It says it was the worst of times and the worst of times. Perhaps the easy explanation is that 2 hurricanes killed Mitt Romney's chances. The first hurricane was Isaac, the one that skirted Tampa in late August during the Republican convention. That one seriously disrupted the official schedule. Then the second hurricane, Sandy, struck on October 29. The campaign went into freeze mode, while Obama swung into commander-in-chief mode. Romney's surge was suddenly frozen too. Romney's choice of Ryan was most inexplicable. Ryan was unqualified for the job of vice president and therefore the job of president. Romney promised to create 12 million jobs. That's not a plan, that's a promise. He didn't clearly articulate how he could fulfill that promise. In fact, Romney's team offered the fewest specifics of any presidential campaign ever. And there's some truth to that. But it doesn't go to the crux of the real issues. Here's an article by The Local, talking about reactions from Germany to the election, stating on November 7, America voted for Obama because he was the lesser of 2 evils, claimed the Süddeutsche Zeitung. Remaining president was not an illustrious victory, it said, and the US did not re-elect him for being successful, but because they were not ready to put Mitt Romney in his place. Not much had changed, agrees the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Now in the political centers of power in Washington, everything will remain as it has been. Although divided on the significance of Obama's narrow victory, the local goes on to say, the German press did agree that the campaign had been what der Spiegel called harshest and dirtiest in the history of the United States. For the first time in the US, said Die Welt, the campaigns were tinged with negativity, as the Democrats painted Romney to be a heartless multimillionaire who wants to widen the divide between rich and poor with his tax plan. So again, that comes to an issue and brings us to an issue which is clearly true. And of course, America has given a terrible example to the rest of the world. But it still doesn't quite reach the crux of the matter. Now, here is what two articles by der Spiegel Online wrote, even prior to the election, which comes very close. Now, again, as I said, they don't operate from a biblical understanding. They don't have it. But it is mirrored by what the Bible says. Here's the first article, and they both appeared on November 5, saying this. The United States Army is developing a weapon that can reach and destroy any location on Earth within an hour. From a European perspective, it doesn't matter who wins this election. Only U.S. foreign policy is important to us, and Obama is no dove, and Romney is no hawk. The incumbent president prefers to wage his wars with drones instead of troops, though the victims probably don't care if they are killed by man or machine. Meanwhile, despite all the criticism, his challenger says he wouldn't join Israel, with a country to go to war with Iran, because the U.S. can no longer afford such a thing. In any case, it is wrong to characterize Republicans as a party of warmongers and Democrats as a party of peace. After all, it was Democratic Presidents Harry S. Truman, John F. Kennedy, and Lyndon Johnson who started the wars in Korea and Vietnam. Republican Presidents Dwight D. Eisenhower and Richard Nixon ended these wars. And Ronald Reagan was a peaceful man, compared to the standards we have since become accustomed to. The truth is that we simply no longer understand America. Now that's important for us to realize. Looking at the country from Germany and Europe, we see a foreign culture. The political system is in the hands of big business and lobbyists. The checks and balances have failed. And a perverse mix of irresponsibility, greed, and religious zealotry dominate public opinion. Now notice carefully the next statement. The downfall of the American empire has begun. That's exactly what the Bible tells you. It goes on to say, it could be that the country's citizens wouldn't be able to stop it no matter how hard they tried. But they aren't even trying. My friends, the Bible says that the downfall of the American empire has begun. It has begun some time ago. And no matter what people try to do, no matter whom they elect in any governmental presidential elections, that fact is not going to be changed. Why? Because we, the people of the United States of America, have turned our backs on God, and so God has turned his back on us. We are not living by what the Bible tells us. We are not even worshiping the God of the Bible. We are worshiping all kinds of things in our religious practices coming out of paganism, which God condemns. And nobody is willing to change it. Almost nobody. Here's the other article by der Spiegel Online dated November 5. The United States is frittering away its role as a model for the rest of the world. The political system is plagued by an absurd level of hatred. The economy is stagnating, and the infrastructure is falling into a miserable state of disrepair. Many Americans are losing faith in their country's failure. After a brilliant century and a terrible decade, the United States in this important election year, some said the most important election year ever, some in Europe said that. The United States has reached a point in its history when the obvious can no longer be denied. The reality of life in America so greatly contradicts the claim to be the greatest nation on earth that even the most ardent patriots must be overcome with doubt. What did God say? I will end the pride of your power. It goes on to say, this realization became only too apparent during and after Hurricane Sandy, the monster storm that ravaged America's East Coast last week its effects made all the more devastating by the fact that its winds were whipping across an already weakened country. America, the article goes on to say, is no longer the great, robust global power it once was. Europeans who make such claims have always been accused of anti-Americanism. But now Americans themselves are joining the chorus of those declaring the country's decline, no matter who wins the presidential election. The worst thing about it that the country still refuses to engage in any debate over the reasons for its decline. Of course, they're talking about materialistic things. I am talking about the spiritual reason. The country is not engaging into discussing the spiritual reasons, the fact that we are breaking the 10 Commandments, that we don't even believe any longer in the 10 Commandments, having changed, for instance, the Sabbath into a Sunday worship, which is a pagan worship of a pagan God. We are not willing to debate that, are we? It goes on to say, criticism is seen as a betrayal of America's greatness. At the beginning of the 21st century, the American dream, which consisted mainly of confidence and optimism, envied the world over, is failing. Many Americans have realized for the first time that the U.S. role as a global power is no longer uncontested. There are all signs that America has far less influence than many Americans still want to believe. My friends, that's so very true. We as a nation have not given a good example, most certainly not recently, to the rest of the world. We are claiming to be a Christian nation. We are betraying that claim through our actions. I don't care how many claim to be Christians. I don't care how many politicians claim to be Christians. By what they stand for, by what they say, by what they do, they are betraying that claim. When I look at true Christianity as defined in the Bible, Christ would have never done any of the things we are hearing today, which are so commonplace. And so, my friends, I am asking you, are you willing to look into the Bible to see what true Christianity is all about, and then change your life? You're not going to change the lives of others, but change your life and become a true follower of Jesus Christ. Then even though this country is going down as so sure as the sun is going to set tonight, you don't have to be part of that decline. Thanks very much for listening. This is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.